Hello everybody, good afternoon and welcome to Members Week. I'd just like to start by introducing myself. So my name is Susan Ale. I am the Membership and Development Manager here at RSS, and I will be chairing the events throughout the week. So we will shortly begin a presentation, A Day in the Life of a Statistician, and I'm delighted to say that we are joined by Marie Oldfield. She has a tremendous amount of experience in the profession, so she's going to be able to give you some very useful advice and insights into what it's like working as a statistician. So just a few house rules before I hand over to Marie. Please could you make sure that throughout the presentation your cameras are turned off and your microphones are muted. And we will have a section on a kind of question and answer session. However, that will be at the end of the presentation. So please, if you could hold off to the end to ask any questions. And also the way to ask a question, if you just want to type in the comments box. Now, Marie will try to get through as many questions as possible. However, we do have time constraints, so apologies if your question isn't answered today, but I'm sure you will find a lot of useful information out of the presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of our very excellent guest speaker, Marie Oldfield. Thank you.
Hi everyone. So now that I've figured out how to work Teams today, I think everything will be fine. So a day in the life of a statistician. So I think when people think of statisticians, they think about somebody sat there running clinical trials and doing research design. And I think statisticians do so much more than this. So it could be aircraft reliability, defense modeling, it could be lean manufacturing, it could be probability for a TV program. So there's so much out there that statisticians actually do. And I've done quite a lot of this because as you can see, I've got two businesses and I did start off in a full-time career, but then I decided to go out on my own. So a lot of the experience that I've got has been from doing different roles. So let's talk to you a bit about that. So I've got my CStat, I've got my CSI, so I'm a chartered statistician and a chartered scientist. I run Oldfield consultancy and Koinua coaching, and the coaching arm was born out of a lot of training that we actually started doing a couple of years ago. So we set that up to do just training. So a day in the life of, there's many different types of day that I've had. A consultancy day, so this will be completely different from a full-time position. It might be project work, it might be consultancy. In a full-time job, you might have many different projects, you might just have one project. So depending on what you're doing in your career, the day could be completely different. So in my first full-time job, I worked at DSTL and we didn't have a very big statistics section. So I ended up being the cross-site consultant for everywhere. If you know DSTL, you know that there's Portendown, which does chemical, biological, radiological and nuclear. And then there's the Portsdown West site that does more operational research. So that's more defense modeling, force modeling, ballistics modeling, all that kind of thing where you're not needing experimental labs. So these are, I tried to think of a typical day and actually I couldn't think of one. So these are the typical tasks that I might be doing on any given day. So it might be attending a modeling meeting. So this could be anything from how do we model something to we started modeling it and we need some input from a statistician. And 9 times out of 10, they always get you in too late. So they've already started modeling everything. And then they say, right, we need a statistician. And then you say to them, well, we needed to do the research design and the data collection in such a way to use it for this model. So actually, we might need to go back and maybe do that again. And that's, nobody ever likes being told that. But as a statistician, we've got to have some integrity and ethics. It might be running through the code of a model. So it might be that somebody is producing a model, going through a model. They need to know what the code is doing. They're not sure if the code is producing the right answer. They're not sure if it's statistically compliant. So it might be running through the code with a team. Validation and verification of a model. So it might be that they need to audit their model. So you might be looking at how do you validate the output, how do you verify the model, and that can be quite difficult, and especially if you've been brought in later on and then you're looking at things that have already been done that you can't, the research design and the data might not, and then you have to work with that and move forward with it or try and get them to go back and do something else. So it just depends on kind of what stage they're at with that. This was an interesting task, reproducibility and repeatability for RAF flights and air capability. So they had some new jets come out, and some, an RAF person approached me and said, we need to test this new scanner, and we need to know how many flights we need to do because it's really expensive to send a jet up in the air. How many flights do we need to do? So that was actually a really small piece of work with a really small piece of statistical methodology, but it was so impactful because it can save millions of pounds, because we did a test with, I think, 18 to 20 aircraft, whereas they might have actually tried to send up 50 to get the results had they not known that. So it's really, the impact of statistics is really quite huge. I might have been arranging analyst training sessions. So at the time that I was working with DSTL, they brought out the Aqua book, and there was a huge push on best practice in analysis and best practice in statistics, and we needed to do some training sessions on that. So we tried to push the message of the Aqua book across government, and this kind of led to arranging analyst training sessions, and then above that, arranging conference sessions. I think they were every month, where we got a really good speaker in, and they spoke to analysts about what they should be doing, how they can do it better, different, because you can get a little bit siloed. So it's really good to know about what's going on out in the world and in the different departments. So when you're kind of when you're going to these training sessions and you've got experts coming in and talking to you, you're kind of learning a bit more about what methods you might be able to use on different problems. That Aqua book, you've spelled it correctly there, Stephen, is on the internet, so you can just find it. It's public on the government website, so if you just type that in, you'll find that. Attend a cross-government stats meeting. So this was quite an interesting offshoot of the Aqua book type things that were going on. Cross-government needed to up their game in terms of analysis, because there'd been the Macpherson inquiries where the Aqua book came from, and there'd been some quite bad decisions made in the modelling there. So we were really trying to push best practice, and that turned into cross-government best practice, because you don't just find a statistician at DSTL, you find them in the Home Office, you find them in Department for Transport, you find them all over the place, in finance, and they can be sat there and you might never ever know that they're there. So we needed to do some cross-government implementation. So that was another thing that I was involved in. And review outputs and processes of land wargaming. So it might be that you're doing you're using a really unsophisticated model, or you're pushing little people around on a map, and you need to know what is the outcome of that. Do we win? Do we not win? What do we need to do? And actually, DSTL gives really good opportunities for you to go out in the field with the Army and the Navy, so that you can look at what kind of you can do a bit of operational research on what kinds of methodology you can use and what courses of action you can take. And then there's some really good modelling that you can do to figure out if they do this or if they do that, might they win or might they not win? And there's a whole suite of models that we use, especially when I'm training senior military figures, which is one of the things that I do now. We use these models. So they're really, really interesting, and it can actually enlighten people that are senior civil servants or senior military that maybe have not thought about different courses of action and what they might want to do. It really kind of highlights to them what the different variables are and what the different outputs are. So it's all really quite interesting, and you get to meet a huge amount of people. And I think it's the same. Go out and you meet people and you network and you do a good job, people are more likely to ask for you. Which is why when I got to the end of my 2 years at DSTL, I was literally everywhere. So I might be reverse engineering some chemicals one day, I might be doing some clinical trials another day, and I might be doing some wargaming the next day. So it was extremely varied. So when I left DSTL, I set up my own company. So I'm going to talk to you about this in two different phases. So I got a phone call from Airbus to go and work for NATO, which involves setting up your own company. So it's a bit more difficult in terms of a day in the life here, because what you might be doing from day to day, working out your expenses, you might be reconciling your accounts, and none of these things take a huge amount of time, but they're things that you have to schedule in, because if you don't do them, your accountant can't submit your taxes and things like this. Contract legalities, you get contracts from clients and you've got to look through them and make sure that that contract lines up with your contract and that everybody's on the same page. You know where the expenses are coming from, how you're getting paid, what you need to do. So that can be a little bit time consuming. And you might be looking at an advertising and marketing strategy. So if nobody knows you're there, you can't get any clients. So if you're advertising yourself and marketing yourself on different platforms, then people are going to know that you're there and you'll get more clients. This is not an easy thing to do. I thought it was. It isn't. So I'm spending a lot of time at the minute looking at advertising and marketing because I have no idea how to use social media. So it's always a journey of teaching yourself new things and developing, because even in this kind of admin space of running a company, it's still there's still a lot to do and a lot to learn. So the interesting part about the consultancy is this. So I've had a few clients over the years, and recently people have been picking me up off the consultants directory from the Royal Statistical Society, because I'm a chartered statistician, so I'm in the directory. And I got a phone call one day off 2-4, who were producing a program for Channel 4, and they said, "Oh, you're the first person to pick up." And I was like, "Oh, hi. Did I apply for something?" And they were like, "No, we need some help from a statistician." So what they wanted to do was, it ended up quite complex actually. From a really basic sounding project, they wanted to get people to stay in the cooking show long enough to be able to produce enough TV, enough drama for the episodes, but they wanted to change the price structure. So when you take a whole format and you change it all, then you've not really got anything to reference against, and you have to look at human behavior as well as what the prizes might be, as well as how much oh, what happened? It went off, it's fine. As well as how much they might lose. And so it gets quite difficult to figure that out, because you're trying to work with human behavior and the statistics. So we did a lot of probability within that and worked out what the probability of how much you might need to spend, how much you might lose, but really how to kind of incentivize people to stay within the program. So that was quite an interesting project and something that came out of the middle of nowhere. And they gave me about a week to finish that, which was, we could have done with longer, and we could have done with some research. And it was really nice actually, because they invited me down to the studios afterwards to come and see it being filmed, and I couldn't get there because it was a bit short notice, but yeah, that would have been really nice. And the other example was the University of Huddersfield. So we were, again, that was off the consultants directory, and they were looking at when we've got a lot of students and their grades are moving up and down, and we've got people that are just on the edge of getting a 2-1, but they're not quite, then what's going on? So again, this sounded really easy. There's a lot of data, let's model it. Actually, the answers came out of the narrative. So when we looked at different, because we were looking at kind of, people were split up into different types of ethnicity. So we have people from Bangladesh, people from India, and people from Asia. And the categorization that's being used at the minute is BAME, I think it is. And it was really difficult because these categories weren't allowing for us to break down what people were doing inside them. So there was different types of Asian categorization, there were different types of minority ethnic categorization, and we had to try and break these down. And when we went and spoke to the students, it was a case of, well, actually, in my culture, I'm expected to work in a family business. So if you could just move the lectures an hour later and you could maybe subsidize my transport, then I'd be able to get there and my grade would go up. And then there was things like language barriers and attendance, and all these things were becoming linked into the cultures. So we were doing the statistics, but we were doing descriptive statistics, really basic stuff. because there was so much data, just to see what the data was doing, where there were problems in attendance, where there were problems with, we collected it by category. But the problem was, when the data had been collected, not all the data was there, and not all the categories were there that we would have liked. So we had to make a lot of conclusions based on the data that we had, but not necessarily on the data that we might like. So that was these were both really, really interesting projects. And these are, I'm going to put the slides back up in a sec. And it was just really interesting to kind of move from project to project like this and do different things. So this is why I'm saying, kind of in my day job, it's not always the same day. In fact, it's never been the same day, actually. I think last year I was up and down the country, no end, just trying to, I think I was balancing 4 different projects last year. It was crazy. And then I was out in Holland working for NATO as well on their new air capability. So it was a very, very busy year last year. And actually this year, in some ways, has been a nice, relaxing time for me, because I've been able to work from home. Here are the slides. So I think I got everything on that last slide. Yeah. So as well, there's other things like scoping projects. So every single time that I've been in to do a project, the scope has never been what it is, what they think it is initially, because when people look at a problem, everybody looks at it in different ways, and it takes a bit of discussion to work with the client to understand what it is that they really need from the problem and what it is that you can provide, because they might not be aware of the added value that you can provide as well. And then delivering briefs to clients and networking. So there's a lot to do with stakeholder management, interpersonal relationships. So it's not always about the statistics. And actually, in some instances, it's about descriptive statistics and more about the narrative and the context. So it's really, kind of our job as a statistician to kind of figure out, what we need to really do in each project. And that kind of comes with experience, really. So, yeah, there's been no typical day. I absolutely love my job. So I can be flying out to a different country, I can be on a train, I can be coming home and then flying off somewhere else. The amount of times I had to fly back into the country for different things. So it's been absolutely brilliant, and I've really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, we're still going. So there's a lot more to look forward to. And I got another call the other day of somebody who found me on the consultants directory to ask me about a new project. So yeah, going up to Christmas, we might be a little bit busy again. So working with many different types of people, you can be working with anyone, and they're all different types of people. And it's really important to have really good interpersonal skills, because it could be, you could have an introvert, you could have an extrovert, you could have somebody technical, non-technical, not specialist at all. So a wide range. I tend to do a lot of technical to non-specialist translation as well. So somebody in the army might say to me, I want X, and then I need to go and say to the technical people that are coding it or doing the modeling, we need this, but I need to translate it into their language. And then they might say, well, I can do X, Y, and Z, but then I need to bring that back and translate it for the person that's not a specialist. So it can get really, really interesting in terms of communication and language as well, and acronyms. At DSTL, I think it's the worst for that. So I think the last time I did a project in defence, I was down in Defence Digital a couple of months ago, and they were using the same acronyms for completely different things. So somebody thought they were talking about an optical core, and somebody else thought they were talking about a business case. So it's really, yeah, that conversation was crazy. So it's really good to get to the bottom of what people think that you're saying, because I think communication is really, really big in this business. You can have competing objectives and competing stakeholders. So when you've got many different projects, like I've always had, you've always got competing motivations and competing projects that always want your time or information from you or something like this. So it's important to manage time well. And I would not have got through my days at DSTL without managing my time well, because it was back-to-back meetings, and then I had to do analysis and methodology after that. So it really is about working efficiently, I think, sometimes. I've found that I've needed to be very flexible and adaptable. So I might be told I need to be in one place one day and then another place the other day. Or I'm working on one project one day and then the budget gets cut, and then we move straight on to another project. And it might be as complex as moving from a really in-depth statistical modelling project onto a human fatigue project, and that might be overnight because of the way that the budgets are done within defence. And I'm constantly learning. So as a chartered statistician, I have to give in my CPD every year, and I found that that's kind of pushed me towards, you know, more opportunities and more development than I might have otherwise considered. And I think it's important, especially in the conference, when you go there and you see what everybody else is doing and you see all the new methods and you look at how they're applying that to their work. And it's really interesting to then take that kind of methodology and apply it to your own work as well. So yeah, I'm always learning, always networking, and always trying to see what's going on out there in the world and where I can maybe use it or contribute to what's going on. So yeah, 20 minutes. So I am now open for questions. If anybody wants to drop anything in the box, I'm happy to help. If you want to drop me an email, there's my emails, and I will follow up.
Marie, thank you so much for your presentation. And yes, I would like to throw open the questions to any members who would like to ask. I actually do have a question for you, Marie. So just while we're waiting for our people to type up their questions. So you mentioned that when you started out in your career, there was a bit of a challenge with maybe sometimes you're trying to explain a concept that people aren't getting, or it's or maybe they want things done in a certain way. So I just wondered, how did you resolve that to begin with, and how did you find kind of challenging people and presenting your arguments in a way that they could comprehend and understand what it is that you're aiming for?
So I think, because I used to be a school maths teacher as well for a couple of years, until I kind of realised that there was more money outside it. And that kind of taught me how to do this kind of thing. So when I'm explaining a concept to somebody, I might explain it one way, but then I kind of check their reaction and see if they're understanding it. Because it might be that I need to explain it a different way. And there's, you can explain it a technical way, you can use a context to explain it, you can use an example to explain it. It's better to try and stay on the side of simple explanation, even if you're talking to a technical specialist, because I had a project once with a physicist and we were both saying the same thing, but we didn't understand each other because we were talking in completely different languages. So I've always tried to keep it really, really simple, because most of my clients are not specialists as well. So it's really important that I'm able to communicate between technical coders and you know, maybe a senior civil servant or somebody, or breaking down the content of a really complex home office model to you know, a minister or somebody like that. It can be very challenging to be able to communicate technical concepts, and I think that that's something that I'm still working with and still learning, because I don't think you ever stop learning that, but it's something that I found was really, really useful in terms of being able just to get that message across.
Okay, so it's kind of breaking it down into just to make into. I can see that we've got some questions coming in. So this is from Jalal. He says, well, I suppose it kind of links in with that. So how did you deal with non-statisticians when presenting statistical terms and results? I think you've answered a bit about that. I don't know if you want to add anything else.
I think there's another point with statistical terms and results, because when I've seen a lot of the output from modelling that I've gone in to look at, it's all been p-value, p-value, p-value. And then people have said, oh, the p-value is this, so it must be good. But then you say, well, hang on, you might have a massive error, or you might have a problem in your research design. Mm-hmm. So when I've gone and looked at this research and kind of picked these problems up, some of the studies have ended up being invalid after you've gone in and looked at it, because they weren't done correctly in the first place. Mm. And sometimes it's because maybe you've got a non-specialist that's not understanding how to do the analysis that then does the output, or you've got somebody that thinks, oh, everything needs to be really, really technical and I just need to get a p-value. I try not to use p-values. I try to use explanations and narrative and context, because I think that gives more to the person and the client at the end and adds more value than me saying, well, this is, because nobody that I've ever worked with really understood a p-value. So it was really pointless for me to go and tell them in terms of a p-value what their study meant. So I've just really hardly ever used it.
Okay, so we just have some more questions coming in. It's fascinating to hear that as well. Sorry, I'm just trying to, the computer's being a little bit slow, sorry about that.
The next one is about CSTAT and CSI.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. CSI, I would recommend most people go for that in the technical field, because it's a really good qualification to have. It's a fairly in-depth application, but it is very much competency based. So it's all about what you've done and how you've done it, and that's a really refreshing change, because when I first went for CSTAT, this was quite a few years ago, it was based on your work experience. And because my work experience had been so higgledy-piggledy, people couldn't really understand what it was that I was doing. So when it changed to the competency route, that's when I put my application in and got my CSTAT, because I was able to show off my skills, but just not in terms of I've had a job for this amount of time, in terms of these are my skills that I've been using. So I found CSTAT quite difficult until the competency assessment came in, but it's actually a lot easier to do that form than it is to do the CSI form. The CSI form is pretty heavy. I didn't find it intimidating so much as a little bit frustrating, because it does take a lot of time and you do have to think a lot about the things that you've done to pull out the best examples. But when you're working for government anyway, all of the applications are competency based, so you have to write these examples anyway. So I think by that point I got used to writing them, so it was quite easy for me to just keep regenerating these results, but with different angles, and then put the different competencies in the right areas. So I'd recommend that everybody goes for professional qualifications, because we're all statisticians and technical people, and we want to be recognised, and these professional qualifications help us to do that and get you on the consultants directory, which is obviously a good place to be.
Yeah, that actually brings me quite neatly to another question. So, and I will get to Ben's question in a moment, but just in terms of what the RSS has done for you, and given that it's Members Week, and then we might have some members who are starting out, or perhaps just not as far down the road as you are in terms of the profession. Could you just explain some of the opportunities or anything that you feel that you've got from the membership that's really helped with your career so far?
Yeah, I've got a lot from it, and I sit on quite a few committees as well. I sit on the professional affairs, finance and economics. I sit on the review panel for Statisticians for Society. So I do quite a bit within the RSS because I enjoy the peer networking, and that's been absolutely fantastic to be able to meet people that are doing the same type of stuff as me, and just to be able to go to the conferences and see different methodologies, see what people out there are doing, and keep kind of learning and developing. I think it's really, really helped to be a member of the RSS, and it's given me quite a lot in terms of personal growth, professional growth, academic growth, because I'm currently doing a PhD in artificial intelligence. So it really does help to be able to have people to speak to and fall back on that are doing the same type of, and maybe not even in the same industry. On our panels, we can have somebody that's doing, sports statistics and clinical statistics and academic statistics. So you can all kind of learn from each other. So I found that really good.
Okay, it's lovely to hear that, especially from the point of view of the membership as well. So just going to Ben's question, he was talking about networking, and he says, you talked about the importance of networking. How are you doing networking within the new work environment? It's a very interesting question.
Okay, so this has been an interesting one. So what I've done is I've set up some Eventbrite seminars recently, because I'm trying to network from home, and it can be very difficult. But I'm also making contacts on LinkedIn, and I've got different platforms for my different businesses, so Instagram and Facebook. I launched a podcast and I interviewed a load of people for that. So I find that if you kind of go out there and just speak to people or message them and say, oh, hi, I've noticed that you're doing this and I want to get involved. I mean, I've been doing my PhD and I've been looking at different papers. I've been emailing the people that write the papers to find out more about their papers, or, what their challenges are or what their interests are around this area. So it can be tricky, but there's a lot of ways around it. And actually, I've been doing work with clients this year and I've actually seen or met them because they've been in defence, so you're not allowed your cameras on the computer, and we've not been in the office. But it's not stopped me from building a really good relationship with people and actually coming out with a few new friends. So I think it's just about really approaching people, having a bit of confidence and going and just being interested in the world and coming from a place of curiosity.
Okay, it sounds like you've been very adaptive in these times and you still have that tenacity to do well and to keep networking. I'm just going to check if we have any more questions. I don't think we have any questions at the moment. However,
I can see two up there. Do you want me to run through them quickly?
Yeah, so that could just be my screen. So,
advice for young statisticians, I would recommend that you don't get too technical, communicate well, network a lot, and take advantage of every single opportunity that comes your way, because you're learning. If you're a young statistician, you're in the field, and the RSS has a lot to support you with that. So get involved with us, and you'll meet people that can help you with your career. Do you interact with data scientists more from the machine learning side? Sometimes not. It depends what project I'm on. I was just doing a project with Defence Digital, and that was a bit more data science-y. So it's very difficult, actually, I think, being a statistician at this point in some ways, because there's so many different programs, coding languages, data science, machine learning, all this kind of stuff, and you're expected to keep up with every single thing that's going on. I can't, because it's too much, because I've got clients as well, so I can't learn a new coding language and a new platform. But I know people that know how to use it, so that's where I bring those people in. Where I'm interacting with data scientists, I think it is pretty difficult at the minute with the language and the marketing the way it is with data science and artificial intelligence, because the language is very anthropomorphized, and so giving human qualities to technology is not helping us to really understand the objectivity of what that technology is actually doing and what it is. So I really do have to break things down, and trying to explain to an engineer what kind of AI might be able to be given to them for them to look at maintenance of different parts within a system. The papers on that are absolutely black box. Understand them is very difficult from an industry perspective. So I might sit there and kind of run through it, look at the study results, look at what the paper's suggesting or saying, and then go through that and break it down and explain it. And I've managed to do that quite a few times, but it takes a lot of brain power and a lot of communication skills. So it is hard, but it's doable. And yeah, how do you find studying and working full time? An absolute nightmare. So my PhD is based on the work that I'm doing within artificial intelligence and defence and that kind of thing. But it is all about time management, I think. So I'm doing my PhD part-time, but it's kind of full-time because the papers that I'm writing are coming out of my work. So I'm kind of doing the same things together. I'm not doing anything too different in my work that I'm doing in my PhD. So I think it just comes back to the same thing that I was saying earlier about when you've got many different projects, just make sure you prioritize and time manage really well. And that's the best, skill that you can have for juggling all these different things.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Marie. So are there any other questions for now? No. I think that's it for the questions. So Marie, I would just like to say a very big thank you for taking some time out to join us today and for sharing all your expertise. And we do wish you all the best with the studying and with the work as well. So thank you very much, and we're very privileged to have you today.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure, and I hope everybody enjoys the rest of Members Week.